to session 3A. So reconvening of the afternoon session, which took a short adjournment for the panel to discuss some further information that's usually come in from the submitters and the planning consultant, Mr. Cumming. Coming to Mr. Byrne, we've had a discussion and we are very pleased to receive this information. We're not in a position to ask logical questions. We don't want to put the officers in a position where they have to make a decision on the fly.
Understood, sir.
What we'd rather do is provide some time for the officers to digest the matter and have some further discussion with you and then report back to us either as part of the right of reply or if more times necessary as part of the integration hearing, which is the very last hearing, sort of a wrap-up hearing.
Okay.
So in that time, we would ask that the agricultural report be reviewed by Council's agricultural consultant, Ag first. I think of the person's name.
And needs.
Ms. Chambers.
Yeah.
Ms. Chambers has done a similar peer review to a report that was produced by the Bruce and Mr. Milner or another submitter, Mr. Daniels, I believe. So that's not a new process that we're introducing. Using Mr. Daniels' mission as an example, we also had the engineering report peer reviewed by Council Rezoning and Free Water staff. So with that also. I think those are precursors to having the officers report back to us, but at some stage I'd like, depending on the outcome of those results, you, Mr. Cummings, to meet with Ms. Falloon and discuss the matter further.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very happy with that as a process and happy to discuss.
I hope I've wasted your time coming down here today, but I just think that time's better used here more fully and to have a more fulsome report from the officers based on this new information.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, may I ask, should I anticipate coming to the wrap-up hearing then? I guess that depends on the results of our discussion.
As a fallback position, normally we allow 15 working days from the close of hearing for the right of reply. Depends on how quickly Ag First and the Council's Rezoning service people can review the information that you've tabled today. If that can happen in the next 5 to 15 days, it hopefully gives you time to then discuss the matter with Ms. Falloon. But if you can't, then we do have the luxury of the integration hearing. It'd be nice if we could deal with it in a way. But if we needed to ask further questions, and given that you've given up your presentation today, it would be only fair to allow you an opportunity to talk to the submission in the event that there's not an agreement between you and Ms. Falloon.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
I just clarify for the panel. The action is on the 26th of this month, which is in 10 days. So I guess the timeline may not.
Yeah, we might just declare a special meeting, but I guess that puts more onus on trying to get this resolved for the wrap up, for the right of reply if we can, even if we have to extend the right of reply for that one matter. Where it does create an issue is if you don't have, if you can't reach an agreement, then we would need to afford you an opportunity to speak more fully. And we're not questioning you today on your planning evidence. We've all read it, but I think it's probably premature on that in light of this new information that's come in.
Understood.
Yeah. Byrne, are you happy with that?
Very happy, yep.
Thank you for pointing that out, Charles. It's I've completely forgotten about that date. Ms. Falloon, are you happy with that? I'm not going to issue a direction. I think it's pretty clear what needs to happen. And we'll record that as just part of the records that we do at the end of the hearing tomorrow. So you don't need a written direction.
No, Mr. Chair, that's fine. My question is, will I be contacted by the council then? Is that the next step?
just level it up with you and Friday for you will be to get those reports circulated for review.
Thanks, thanks very much.
Thank you. This time I had someone vacate a room, I didn't follow an instruction.
What was your first?
And our next submitter is Andrew Ronna. Andrew, Penny.
Hello, everybody. Kia ora. Can everybody hear me and see me?
We will see, yes.
Okay, now.
It's a last minute wardrobe adjustments, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan, we're just, we're running a little bit late. Can you just give us a minute just to get our paperwork in?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll be very fast as well. I've just got something very, very quick.
These paragraph numbers in 42.
It's really brief. So paragraph 204. So further submitted to all
Page 43.
And you don't deal with it in your summary, do you?
No.
No. Okay, we okay.
Yeah.
Good. Right, we're in your hands, Mr. Ryan.
It's a very scary proposition. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you seeing me. I know that this has been going for a long time and you've been in a meeting for a long time, so I'll be very, very quick. If it's okay, I might just very quickly share my screen with you all. Just before I do that, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so bear with me and I will just share my screen. Apologies. Okay, let me just try that again. Not working. Sorry, team. The joys of technology.
Yes.
It's telling me that I'm going to have to leave and then return again. I'm very, very sorry. Would that be okay, everybody?
Fine.
I'm sorry. Thank you, team. I will be right back.
This while the submitter's going to log back in. This is a further submission in support of the Coffee and Whitehead
Gotcha.
Boundary Road, Dominus Road.
Right. I'll turn them on.
Is that correct?
That's what I've got on his actual submission.
Yes. Not hearing from, we're not hearing from Coffee and Whitehead directly. They presented at an earlier hearing. Back, Mr. Ryan.
I'm back. Okay, hopefully, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
No.
Is that a yes?
No, well, not quite.
Not quite. Okay.
You're sharing the Teams window as opposed to your screen.
Okay.
So if you click on share, and you should be able to select the document you want to share.
Is that any better?
Yeah.
Okay. Apologies, team. Thank you for that. So I'll be very, very quick. So my submission was FS40, which was a further submission of Mr. Simon Coffey and Sally Whitehead's submissions, which were S60 and S61. That submission was to amend proposed zoning of properties located at Boundary Road, Donalds Road, and the lower portion of Namatawa Road from general rural to rural lifestyle, which is the area on this map. Right now, the land currently is zoned rural, which means subdivision isn't possible unless you have at least 40 hectares. When you look around, none of the properties are close to that size. The land isn't being utilised for large-scale farming, and the current zoning doesn't reflect how the land is actually being used. The average lot size in this area is 1.8 hectares. I have spoken to a planner who told me that one of the reasons that the council hasn't supported rezoning this area is because the land has a land use capability 3 rating, which essentially means it falls under the definition of highly productive land in the NPS for highly productive land. Under policy 5 of that statement, councils are told to avoid rezoning this type of land unless there are exceptional circumstances. However, I've also been advised that this definition is about to change. So Minister Chris Bishop confirmed both in media release on the 27th of March 2025 and in comments made to the New Zealand Planning Institute conference in Invercargill that Cabinet has agreed to remove LUC3 from the highly productive definition later this year. So the change won't apply to places like Horowhenua or Pukekohe where there are key horticultural hubs, but it will apply here in Masterton. Had this change already come into effect, my planner believes that we would have a compelling case to rezone the land, especially given the demand for housing, our proximity to urban areas, and most importantly, our excellent access to Solway railway station and State Highway 2, linking us directly to the rest of the Wairarapa, Hutt Valley and Wellington. So this brings us to a timing issue, essentially. So unfortunately, the timing of this hearing really means that we're stuck between 2 versions of reality. One that says the land is highly productive and another that recognises that soon it won't be. So had the hearing being held in a few months' time, we'd likely be having a different conversation. So essentially just asking the panel to take that into account and either consider holding off on a decision until that change comes through, or if that's not an option, understand that if we do need to appeal, we'll likely be in a stronger legal position once the NPS HPL is updated. Denying the decision would save everyone the cost and time of an Environment Court appeal and give the panel the chance to assess this fairly under the updated policy. I do understand that asking for a delay might be a bit unusual, but under the circumstances, we did think it may be reasonable. We did have a couple of questions. So there is some inconsistencies in the rezoning recommendations. So this area that I've highlighted here is literally right next to the map that I outlined that's detailed in the submission. So just around the corner here on Chamberlain Road, council's recommending rezoning. Sorry, does somebody have a question?
No.
Oh, apologies. So council was recommending rezoning this land to future urban zone. That land is classified as LUC2, which is actually higher quality land for farming than what we're on. To be clear, there's no plan to remove LUC2 from the definition of highly productive land, even after the policy changes. So aware that a developer owns most of that land, but we're finding it a little puzzling that the council's okay with rezoning better quality farming land while refusing to rezone lower quality land that has the same amenities and same infrastructure. Just on proximity, so proximity to Masterton and Urban Charter. So from my driveway, I can walk to Solway train station under 5 minutes. It's not highlighted on the map, but the Solway train station is literally on the corner of that future urban and general rural zone. It's right there. We can drive to Masterton in under 3 minutes. There's not any rural in any real sense. It is a part of town and it's already functioning as a lifestyle area. So we do think that the zoning should reflect it. I've also been advised, and I'll skip past this because this is just something that they seem to think was relevant. There was a recent Environment Court decision, Garden Trust and others versus Auckland Council, and others in 2025 that dealt with balancing the NPS HPL against the national policy statement on urban development. And while I haven't got any time to go into that, I have been told that it's worth a read, especially for decision makers who are weighing housing demand against blanket land use policies. Lastly, the land has already been lived on like lifestyle land. It isn't being farmed. It's close to town, transport, well placed to meet Masterton's growing housing needs. The only thing standing in the way of a rezoning is a definition that the government has already announced is changing. So respectfully asking the panel if they can consider either making the change now or delaying your decision until the new policy comes into force. And of course, I've put a puppy on there to try and sway the panel in any way, shape or form that I can.
It works.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time, everybody. That was really all. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Just bear with me. And there. So thank you.
Mr. Ryan, I'll just see if the panel has any questions, but before I do, could you arrange to have that presentation emailed through to the hearings
Yeah.
administrator?
Absolutely, I've got that. And the other thing that I have is basically just a one-pager, which is a summary of everything. Now, had I been there in person, I would have just handed that out, but I can email both of those through to you.
Yep, we appreciate it. We'll just see if there are any questions in relation to your presentation.
Thank you.
Fine.
You guys know the land?
Yes.
I just want to know what the puppy's name is.
That's, believe it or not, that's not our dog. We should have taken a photo of our dog. She's a golden lab, and I'm constantly trying to give her up for adoption because she's such hard work, but very much against my wife's recommendations.
Thank you.
Just before you go, I'll just see if there's any questions of clarification in terms of your presentation from the reporting officer. Ms. Falloon, did you do anything in the presentation that you seek any clarification on?
No, not in the presentation, no.
Yes.
But I believe this, was it in regard to rezoning to rural lifestyle zone?
Yes, but this was a rezoning from general rural to rural lifestyle, wasn't it?
That was the submission. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I guess the key thing is that last time we met, there were two reasons as to why that submission was being vetoed by the council or the people acting on behalf of the council. One was because it was considered highly productive land, and the other was because it prevents future urban development. But sort of as we're trying to highlight here, the area that is right next to the area that we're talking about has been marked for future urban, despite the fact that that's actually higher use than what the land that we're on is. So, and of course, with that change coming, that's where we feel that that we've got an argument.
Yes.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So, thank you for your presentation. You obviously own a block of land there. What size is your block of land?
2.2 hectares. Yeah. So our house is 39 Donalds Road. My understanding is the average in the area that we're talking about is 1.8 hectares. And of course, under the current definition, you can't subdivide to under 40. So we're sort of saying, well, that ship is well and truly sailed.
Mr. Ryan, what are you doing on your property at the moment? Is it growing little ones, or what? Are you growing anything? Or?
No. So I have it's a bit of a long story with my personal story, but I have an autistic son. The idea is that perhaps we could build something for him so he can be close by to us, but we can still be in our care. My wife has 2 horses, so she uses a little area for that, and the rest of it is just me on the lawnmower.
Yes. And just out of interest, when did you purchase the property?
I think we've been in there for about 4 years. I think that's sort of a much longer term. My son has only just had his 8th birthday, so yes. We're sort of thinking about it for the future, effectively.
Yes. And when you purchased the property, it was zone rural under the operative plan.
So when we purchased the property, we were advised that there was a district plan coming up. Yes. We were looking at it with the goal of being able to put something somewhere for our son. We also had a really good look at the council strategy, which talked about the need for housing in that area. And so we thought, I mean, I wouldn't say that we bought it entirely with that hope in mind, but it was certainly a factor.
Yes. And your further submission is in support of the Coffee and Whitehead submission. That was dealt with in hearing stream 3, dealing with rural zoning.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Apologies if I'm in the wrong.
Yes. No. That was, when I say it was dealt with, most of the issues, with the exception of some of the rezoning issues, were dealt with in hearing stream 3. So,
Right.
yeah. So this hearing was specifically set down to consider rezoning issues across a number of zones, not just rural to lifestyle. But,
yeah. Right. I mean, I guess from us, I think last time we spoke a little bit around common sense, but didn't necessarily have the expertise in the room, and I guess the to have it sitting there zoned as rural when none of those activities are being used as rural. And I understand that it was part of the highly productive land, but that is changing, and that was, as far as I could see, the only thing that was preventing it from essentially falling straight in line with the council's own strategy and policy, which was housing development that is needed, and it is in the perfect spot. So yeah, again, the two pushbacks that we received last time was it prevented future urban development and that it was highly productive land. So I'm hoping that we can sort of answer those questions.
Yes. You're not the only person to quote Minister Chris Bishop to us in these proceedings.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah.
Sounds like the alteration to the NPS HPL is a matter of time, as opposed to if at the moment, as you've indicated, we have to deal with what's in front of us.
Absolutely, understand.
We won't be undertaking deliberations on this topic for at least a month until the right of reply comes in. Right. So we'll see what happens in that time frame.
Great.
So, thank you. Nothing further from me. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Yep, not always. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking, but thanks for being so patient with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello. I'm good, thank you, and I hope all is well.
Please don't feel intimidated by having such a.
As you can see, I'm very over prepared. No, obviously not. I'm my first one.
Yeah, this is the full panel. The full panel doesn't always sit on all the hearings, but rezonings are quite important and strategic importance. So you've got our full attendance.
That's very good.
Knew you were coming, that's why we.
That's very good. Oh, well, I'm sorry I don't have any technology or can't put anything up on the screen, unless someone can do maybe for me. I'm talking about.
We'll bring up number 75.
Number 75, Solway Crescent, yes, please. Yep.
Just. You tell us a little bit about the property and how long you've owned it and what you do there.
Okay, yep. So yeah, I'm in Masterton, 75 Solway Crescent, Masterton. I have approximately about 4.8 hectares, which is at the moment general rural land, and the new proposed plan has been proposed general rural continue. I've owned the property since 2017. So I've been there, majority of the time. So in my time being there, I've tried to utilise the sort of small block as much as I can in different ways. I've brought in cattle for farming. I've presented cash cropping for a number of things like that.
I'm going down to it.
Oh, I do have I'm sorry, I'm not very good at technology. Out here, but that's it there, just right where your mouse is there.
The triangle.
Yep, the triangle there that boundaries onto the river. So that top part there that you can see, there's a little black sort of penciled line and that comes down. That top part triangle there is roughly about 10 acres. So that is at the same level as the residential land next door. and that level sort of just carries on along there. Originally when I bought the property, across the road where Jenny and where the open area is, and Whitcliffe Place and Jimson Street. And Jimson Street had only probably about 8 houses on there at that time. So the whole lot was pretty well open land, open rural land. So I actually used to lease some of the property there. And it was quite good. It was a bit of a sort of a rural situation. And as you can see now, I'm sort of, there's a lot more residential homes accumulating around me. So those options of generating anything out of this land, profitable wise or anything wise, I'm also classed as the high production farming. Yep. Which would have made sense with the surrounding rural land, but now it's been suppressed down, so it's not really productive now. So what I basically do on the property now is I run a small number of cattle, basically just raise them up from yearling and just carry them on for a couple of years.
Fattening operation.
Just a small fattening operation. It's a hobby. There's no operation as such. It's literally just it's cheaper than running petrol with a lawnmower. So
To give us an idea how many head.
On an average, it's 10 head. Yep, on an average. It does vary from time to time. It's 10 head. And yeah, so the bottom half is being classed under the 150-year flood zone, from what I understand. As you can see, I've also got the aerodrome further down, the hood aerodrome further down. I have been told throughout the years that I'm sorry, I can hand my flash technology over if that helps. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That there was printed off. I got an email in 2022 explaining. So I could bring up her name. I'm sorry, I was a little bit ill prepared for that. Explaining that it was flight restrictions for the hood aerodrome. Now that with this piece of paper here, you can see there's staggered lines. It cuts through half of that top triangle. So it probably leaves roughly about 6 acres out of that original zone. And so, yeah. So
The northern part.
yeah, the northern part. I've just my flash technology again. Again, apologies. I've got another zoomed up photo of this little rounded part here, which I have been told is owned by the roading, there. If you sort of zoom in on that circle, I don't know if you can sort of see just on the road there, right next to the park. Yeah, right there. Which sort of because there's one property which is right there on the place, and the rest is all just land. There's also a shed off to the side there.
Is it roading reserve?
I've been told that the roading owns that part there. Well, as you can see, and
It's your house there, is it?
that is the house there inside that triangle there. Yep. Next to the yellow there, on sort of going to the left. As you can sort of see, and in the last couple of years, the road has been done up as well as finished. So I think roughly that was about $3 or $4 million sort of roading operation. So I don't think much more is going to come out of that. I mean, it's just I'm making assumptions.
Which is your driveway, or is it a?
I have a double driveway. Yeah. So the house was built in the 70s. Originally, it was subdivided off. It had a horse trainer built the place. And you can see where the fence line goes through, which actually goes through the roading area there. That is the original fence line from when I bought the property. I've currently upgraded that. I've got animals as well, so I've put in high fences and things like that, and just followed that line. I spoke to the engineer. I believe his name was Kane at the time on the project, and he sort of explained where the road and everything was going, and they were sort of unsure about this circle here. So, I mean, even I don't know. I'm more than happy to buy my section part back as well as part of this situation, on that triangle there, or however that works. But basically with this roading, set up here, it basically stops any rules of subdivision, of subdividing the house off from the rest of the land or any of those sort of carry-ons. As in, sort of the meters off the land to the rest of it.
How many hectares have you got there?
About 4.8.
4.8 hectares.
Yeah, and that's including the lower part, which goes towards the river.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that includes all of that.
So just to clarify, you want your land to continue to be general rural?
No, I'm hoping to at least change top half into residential, because I mean I'm just surrounded by houses now, and the productivity of any sort of productivity operation is sort of leading out. So yeah, I mean I'm not aware of I mean I'm even just if it was sections or zones or anywhere that like that, I'm hoping to at least get that top part into residential zone.
When you say top part, do you just want to go show us on the just?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
People all the cables.
Yeah. So just this, so I'm going to explain the top part. That's roughly about the 10 acres. So I'll try not to stand in the way. This part here is sort of like a higher zone. It's the same level with all these houses along here. This here is the bottom. It drops down into a sort of a lower level, which is the same along here. And then there's another level again.
There's a sort of terrace running above that, sort of up, go straight up. No, go up.
Terrace. That is yes, that's the fence line that runs along there, and that is a terrace. It's a little bit higher than along here, but yes, that is a terrace along here. So basically, if you come down this line here, that's a fence line.
Is that the part you're thinking of keeping rural? And then
This part would be rural, keeping this rural, and this part in here, I would like to sort of be considered into residential. Yeah.
Is there any way we can put the aerodrome noise overlays here on top of that?
So there we go, which confirms what you said, the northern part of your
Yeah.
tip of the triangles.
Yes. Yeah, different than the image that I received that it's had, but that red zone, yes, that's right. Yeah. Yep.
And what are those two fans?
It's the limitation surface.
Okay, height, so it's a height matter, and the dotted line is the noise boundary. Is that the outer, you know what dBA line that is? 65 dBA.
Like the outer one.
pilots know where they're flying.
Okay.
Do pilots know where you're flying? It looks very curvy.
So the one so it's just there where the cursor is, the triangles.
I must.
That's why the grass is green.
Fertilizer, right? Yeah. My stepfather loves planes as well, so he loves coming down for a visit.
Centers of where see the word viewer. Oh gosh, keeps changing.
Sorry.
Can we have one image? Is up there?
See where the word viewer is, drop straight down.
So actually take about a third of your land is beyond that.
Oh,
Yeah,
noise.
it's been open space and
Yeah,
directly
got it.
opposite.
got it.
And I sort of noticed that into the other residential areas too, there's also the same scenario. And
Exactly, I mean,
Yeah.
it's comparing.
So that would,
So that the two top dotted lines are the outer boundaries and then
Yeah.
the middle dotted lines.
Yeah.
It's the.
so a good 80% of your proportions within the outer boundary noise contour. So it's only that top. But
Yeah.
not that.
And which is not sort of in the area that I'm looking at, sort of in this situation. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit underprepared. I can
No, you don't
seek
understand that.
I'll sort something out now that I know what I'm aware of.
Being I've got a copy of your submission in front of me.
Yep.
Not seeing any request for residential zoning on that submission.
Okay, the original submission I put in,
You said the land being classified as rural and not residential, and saying I'm opposed to the new plan due to Solway area filling up with residential properties. And 75 Solway continues to be rural. With all the new neighbours, it's dangerous to stop.
Yes.
There's also a large roundabout.
Like it changed, but it changed to what now?
Yeah. Was the submission summarised?
I had inferred that he wanted it rezoned to general residential zone. But
Okay.
yeah,
And that's how it was summarised
yes,
in the summary of submissions.
yes,
Were there any further submissions?
no.
You've got the benefit of the doubt for the opposite.
Yeah.
So yes, there's no natural justice situation. People would have seen what you requested. Got to say, I don't know that I would have summarised it that way myself, but got a friendly face over there. So, okay. Any further questions of Mr. Foreman?
No, I'm actually pleased I've seen it and had it explained to me. I understand. Thank you.
We might take the opportunity we will take the opportunity to visit the site. We probably don't need to come on to it, but we'll be visiting all the zoning requests.
Yeah.
So, but in the meantime, you don't need to do anything further.
Okay.
I think we've got enough information and we'll deliberate in due course.
Okay.
Coming in.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your. Yeah.
And just keep that on there. It's all right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Online or what? Oh, Russell. I see you down the back.
Oh, good. Russell.
No?
The name.
Yeah.
So Tim gives his apologies. He had an appointment.
We're sort of running on time, but not. I had to reshuffle the day a little bit, so.
Okay.
Sort of on time as far as you're concerned.
Yeah. So I've got some speaking notes, which I've made copies of.
Yeah. Good.
Ruth, you'll circulate them.
Got paper clips and set staples. Yes.
Please.
127.
Now.
This is regarding 150 Noah Tower Road.
Yeah. Well, the memory just kicked in, Russell.
Thanks, Ruth.
There again.
Yeah, summarise.
This is the furthest submission, isn't it? Yeah. Relation to the Stephen and Judith Brown submission. Bringing your that side up. So we dealt with this. We just for the lunch and you must still been online.
Yeah, well, so
Okay, you proceed.
Okay, thank you. This is just keynotes. There's nothing new here. It's just picking up on some of the officer's summary and also the discussion this morning. So I'll take my evidence as read and note that I have read the council officer's summary statement and listened to Ms. Balloons with the panel this morning. As set out in my evidence, 150 Ngāwatawa Road, it's just over 9,000 square metres, contains a large commercial shed at the southern end, with the balance either concrete or metal hardstand. Commercial use of the site appears to go back to the 1950s when it was used as a wool store. Currently, Mr. Tim Hart runs a machinery hire business with a resource consent. So I remain of the view that the appropriate zoning of this site is mixed use zone and not general rural zone. My support for the rezoning is made on the basis of the following. site has had significant commercial investment in its building and hard stand areas, with future use almost certainly commercial. The mixed-use zone permitted standards protect adjoining rural land. Mixed-use zoning will not lead to activities which would impact the ability for existing rural activities to continue, reverse sensitivity. The site is opposite other mixed-use zones on a key transport link and is a logical extension of the urban boundary. Rezoning to mixed use will allow appropriate activities to occur as of right in the future without the expense, uncertainty, and time delays associated with obtaining resource consents. And this is the driver for Mr. Hart's submission. In the summary statement, Ms. Falloon has recommended that the site remain general rural zone. Following this morning's presentation, I understand that this position may have softened with acknowledgement that the mixed-use zone policies and rules do indeed provide protection to the adjoining rural sites. Points and questions in the summary statement are addressed below. So at point 34 on page 5, Ms. Falloon notes that the mixed-use zone adjoins the general residential zone. In addition, I'll add that the mixed-use zone also adjoins the general rural zone on Biddle's Cutting Road in Greytown, south of Kuranui College. Therefore, this would not be the only example of mixed-use zone being next to the rural general zone. At summary statement point 34, Ms. Falloon questions whether the existing activity is a commercial or industrial activity. And in my opinion, the existing activity fits nicely into the proposed district plan's definition of trade supplier. It would fit the subcategory hire services and would therefore be a permitted activity subject to meeting permitted standards under mixed use zone rule 9. And I've set out there a list of the other activities covered by the definition of trade supplier. I won't read them out. So at point 34, it is noted that the mixed use zone, objective 4, refers to residential open space and recreation zones, but not the general rural zone. And looking at the section 32 analysis, there does not appear to be any reason to leave the general rural zone out of the mixed use zone, objective 4. As raised by Ms. Falloon this morning, I note that interzone management between the mixed use zone and the general rural zone is achieved through mixed use zone policies 4 and 5.
Yes, and I think policy 5A and 5B. I think Ms. Falloon conceded that on the reverse sensitivity issue alone, she's probably okay. That the reverse sensitivity could be managed anyway through that policy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
I guess regarding objective 4, if it was within the scope of the panel, it could be amended to include general rural zone.
Sure. Yeah, just it's a scope to check.
But if not, the adjoining properties are protected through mixed use zone policies 4 and 5.
You captured that. Yes, so just Mr. Hooper's suggesting that he's suggesting that policies 4 and 5 will address the reverse sensitivity issue. 5A, and Falloon agrees with that. Mr. Hooper is also suggesting that if there was scope, objective 4 could be extended to include the mixed use zone.
No, the MUS objective 4.
General rural zone.
Rural zone.
That's objective 4.
Yeah.
So general, and whether there's scope to do that as a consequence. Yeah,
I think the intent is there, but it just doesn't. But beyond the objectives and policies, the following permitted standards protect the adjoining property: setbacks, maximum fence height, screening of industrial activities, outdoor storage or servicing area screening, noise, lighting, and signs.
You say the adjoining property, twin the property behind it.
Yeah, which is 5 West Bush Road.
Yeah.
Which is just to the north.
Yes.
Good.
What's the land use there?
It's an olive grove.
Yes,
Mm.
pretty intensive. Do you know the ownership name? That you,
Can find out.
okay, I just wondered whether, was that part of the, it wasn't part of the other properties, was it? Okay, sorry, I've interrupted you there. You're at the bottom.
Yeah, so the only mixed use zone permitted standard which does not address the general rural zone is the height to boundary standards.
Mm.
So presumably this is not considered to be an issue in a rural context, with rural properties being larger and with larger setbacks. Height to boundary standards generally seek to protect sunlight access. In terms of this site, which sits to the south of 5 West Bush Road, height to boundary standards are not considered to provide any value to them. At points 35 and 36, Ms. Balloon disagrees that the general rural zone P6 is met because simply the activity is established. General rural zone P6 relates to reverse sensitivity. And I understand that the primary concern that Ms. Balloon had was around the impact of this site on the adjoining properties, rather than the impacts of adjoining rural properties on this site. So that's a clarification to make. So the former being addressed through the permitted standards mentioned above, and the latter being reverse sensitivity matters covered by general rural zone P6. For completeness, in my opinion, rezoning the site from general rural to mixed use zone does not increase the likelihood of the reverse sensitivity effects sought to be avoided through general rural zone P6. This is because both zone chapters seek to avoid reverse sensitivity effects, and the mixed use zone seeks that through P2. Obviously to incompatible use and development. Regarding point 36, Ms. Falloon questions what is referred to by the statement that rezoning will enable economic development in a manner that manages adverse effects. So just to clarify, resource consents are very specific to the activity that they authorise. Even a relatively minor change in the activity will require further consenting. So Mr. Hart has resource consent to undertake the existing machinery hire activity. However, Mr. Hart has taken the opportunity during this process to seek a zoning of the site which aligns with its past and likely future use. This will provide for alternative and appropriate commercial uses as of right without the requirement for the resource consent. The permitted standards in the mixed use zone would manage adverse effects, and this is an approach that I support. At point 37 in closing, Ms. Falloon suggests that there is opportunity to further evaluate this matter as part of the upcoming spatial planning process. I do not consider that there is any value in deferring this matter to a future spatial planning process because I'm not aware of any further evaluation required. In my opinion, the site can be rezoned now. And finally, just picking up on a point this morning, was to confirm that under the NPS for highly productive land, I've just got a little diagram there, and it's just outside of the class 3 land. So yeah, in summary, in my opinion, 150 Ngawatawa Road should be mixed use zone and not general rural zone.
Just before I pass on to Henry, you remind me, were there any further submissions? Oh, yeah, well, you were further. Yeah. Were there any further submissions in opposition to the primary submitted submission?
Hello. Primary submitter.
Was
Brown.
So,
Yeah.
Jenny,
Yeah.
Stephen and Jenny Brown. Judy.
6 further submissions. The majority in support.
submission in relation to the Brown submission. So one of those would have been from Mr.
Yes.
Five.
So three sought the submission be allowed. Then further submitted Tim Hart, thought it be allowed in part.
Yes.
And one further submitter also thought it be allowed in part. So 2 allowed in part and 3 thought it be allowed.
So none in opposition.
None in opposition. And sorry, there is one from Transpower, they were neutral.
Yes. Did any of those further submissions involve 5 Bush Road?
West Bush.
West Bush Road?
Yeah.
Not clear where the submitters
Quite wrong.
And could you
from.
follow that up, please? Could you give us a table of the names of those that are in support and part support and the address?
Yes. Give that a, yeah, yes, I can.
Thank you. Panel, any questions?
Yes. Russell, is there a expiry on the consent they got there?
I know consent lasts as long as it does, yeah.
Are there be changes in anything
Yeah, so
activity?
Yeah.
That triggers a,
yeah, at the moment he's got consent for a machinery hire business.
yeah,
He was gonna, or even hire something else out that would technically require
yes,
a change of
yeah.
consent.
Or if he was requiring it for storage, that would also
Yep.
require renew of something else.
Yeah, anything that didn't comply with the general rural zone rules.
Yeah.
Questions? Dave? My son?
Something quite, I know the answer to this, but, and it's a ridiculous question, but I'm just going to ask anyway. Can you grow anything on the site?
Half of it's concrete.
Exactly. So how can it be rural? My logic says if you can't grow anything on it, how can it possibly be?
Yeah, it's not a site that looks rural when you pass it. Sure.
One final question from me,
Sorry.
Mr. No, that's fine. If the panel was in mind to grant this submission and create a mixed-use zone, which is a purple line that would basically almost mirror what's on the other side of the road. Would that create any anomalies or any unintended consequences, putting aside reverse sensitivity, that you could think of from a zoning perspective?
I can't think of any.
Opposite, wouldn't it? The answer, wouldn't it?
Have you given any thought as to what differentiates 150 client's property from the other 9 properties down the other end of the highway?
They're a lot more rural. It's sort of, I guess I haven't actually looked at the details, but I think they've got commercial type businesses sort of as almost a secondary use of like a lifestyle type block.
Yes. We asked the question to Ms. Falloon this morning, and one of the points that she pointed to was that all of those 9 properties are largely occupied by land use 3 classification. You're aware of that?
Yes.
So you're suggesting that your client property can stand on its own 2 feet in terms of a rezoning without the rezoning of the other 9 properties?
Definitely. Yeah, I think it marries in nicely there. You can kind of see it. Makes sense.
It's the little triangular bit of your client's property.
I don't know. That's where the car park for the train stop is.
yeah,
It's on the other
it's a
side. of
massive big
Mount
car.
Road.
Yeah,
On the other, it's on the other side.
yeah,
It's a little reserve right in front of you.
Isn't that
So
what?
there's the railway.
Tracks.
Yeah,
So you've got the road, then you've got the railway track.
Yeah. I was thinking, didn't I just see a little triangle at the end of it?
That's on the other
Oh, is that on the other side?
side.
Right.
So that's between the railway line and the road.
Yeah.
No, on the other end of the property. Or was there was a boundary line there just a minute ago.
It's highly productive.
Oh,
The
that's right.
LUC.
Oh, well, it's a scene. Sorry.
But that's all from us. Thank you for your
Thank
attendance. Thanks for going. You were, I think it's a little late today.
Yeah, tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. Oh, no, tomorrow morning.
Probably weird. Thanks, Russell.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll go to my boss.
3 o'clock. It's got break down here.
We've got the breakdown here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who we have to?
Down Heritage Trust.
Ah, yeah, gotcha. Oh. Looked up before, and I wanted to play that way for them.
Welcome, Mr. Rollins. This is your third or fourth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Starring.
Thank you.
Embarrassment slightly is that sometimes just presenting other people's material. Of course we can. Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. At the outset, I kind of want to say that we're aware that the council invests a lot of effort in recognising and protecting the heritage values. And that's evident in the draft plan, but there's some things that we want to emphasise. Preserving the historic spine of Main Street, it's continuous and cohesive, and it has an established character. Shop fronts and historic structures. We're concerned about the possible and potential extension of the commercial zoning further up Main Street. Rather, the Trust and Plan Wild seek expansion to the west, as well as rezoning the Fresh Choice site to allow for growth, but also ensuring the compact charm of Greytown is retained. So developing a town with a footfall centre. Paragraph 118 in the officer's report contends that Fran Wild, incidentally, supports the extension of the town centre zone. In fact, the submission, her submission clearly states that the north-south expansion is not supported by her, but instead that the western expansion.
We had
That
that,
was noted this morning.
this morning. Just a slight typographical error there.
Was it?
Yeah. Putting the
Okay.
name, Fran Wild in the wrong position. Should have been on the next, heading rather than the preceding heading.
Okay, right, thank you. So the further north-south expansion threatens the fabric that makes Greytown distinctive, including the loss of historic residences, increased pressure for subdivision and intensification in the heritage residential zone, and the visual and scale conflict with established character. Our submission is the zoning of the spine be kept as it is. The officer hasn't answered the suitability of the rezoning of 18 sites and instead focuses on the existing use of the site, which are really mixed by the officer's own admission. We'd also note that we consider that more than a third of the sites are residential, as there are a number that have intensive residential activities, and I think that's not been accounted for. And that includes the rest home and the outline planning for, or the planning for former Turkey Red. The officer references only 2 objectives and states the proposed northern expansion provides for a vibrant town centre, with no assessment of why that is the case. There's no assessment of the following factors that are contained in the original Council 32 report for the commercial zone. A, need to maintain the viability and vibrancy of Wairarpa's town centres from out of centre commercial development. B, commercial activities and development located close to residential areas can adversely affect the character and amenity of the neighbouring residential areas. C, recognising and protecting the values of those parts of the town centres that have active street frontages. D, providing for the needs of commercial and mixed areas in a way that recognises the particular values of the different town centres and commercial areas, and they are distinctive, and does not detract from the local character and amenity values. It's compatible with heritage values and creates a positive interface with public space. Development can adversely affect the safe, effective and efficient operation of the transport network. The Trust contends that these factors will not be met by a north-south strip approach, but will be better met by a westward expansion of the town centre. And we develop that some more under 3, support for the westward expansion of the town centre. The Trust strongly supports westward commercial expansion as a more sympathetic and sustainable alternative. It protects the residential and heritage character of Main Street. It supports the approach for residential growth, which is already outlined to the west, Farley Street being part of the first evidence of that. Consideration of the walkability from residential areas would be better achieved by westward growth of the commercial centre, which is sustainable and has less effect upon the climate. Provides greater flexibility for new development behind or beside the town centre core. It enhances the opportunity for laneway growth, creative infill and pedestrian-focused spaces, and internationally that's a push and a thrust and a move away from ribbon development in small towns and even in larger urban areas. It avoids disruption to the historic public realm. It doesn't raise traffic visibility issues and state highway constraints, because you're moving some of the focus from the state highway to the west area of the development. It avoids disruption, and it has less impact on existing residential areas. The strategy respects Greytown's heritage identity while enabling planned and appropriate growth. The argument here is, in a nutshell, that we would like you to consider underlining the westward development of Greytown rather than enhancing ribbon development. Support for the submission of Greytown Country Village. Greytown Country Village Heaven requested that an active front be created along West Street. Parts of Marston and Carterton town centres are subject to an active street frontage overlay. And to that end, just because I wanted to clarify my own thinking, that's the right one. So, in Marston and Carterton, parts of the town centres already have with an active street frontage overlay, and this is used as a planning control. And this is the kind of design where a lively streetscape it already exists. And the council officer says that applying this same overlay to West Street would go against the purpose of the rule, because West Street doesn't currently have that kind of street frontage and no assessment is done to confirm it. But it's a kind of non sequitur, because if we don't engender that possibility, we don't do that work, and that work then rules out the possibility of its development. Despite this, the officer recommends the submission, which may be a typo, and we think recommends rejecting the admission, and we don't follow the logic. We're arguing that due diligence should have been done, meaning a proper assessment of West street frontage could and should have been completed. And the hearing panel, we'd ask of you that you might request an assessment as done to that end. In summary, what we're really doing is asking for proactive planning to shape West Street as a walkable village-style main centre. And we think not to do this is a missed opportunity, and that the assessment should be done and an overlay applied appropriately. And finally, to 5 other matters raised in our submission. Best choice Greytown site, we support the recommendation of the officer that 3 parcels of land be rezoned from residential to town centre. 113 Main Street in Stellable Park, the Trust considers the proposed open space zone within the Greytown Historic Precinct more appropriate than the existing commercial zone. It's unclear how that's been addressed. The Working Men's Club car park, the Trust considers the proposed town centre zone is more appropriate than the existing residential zone, and historic heritage precinct should be extended here. It's unclear how this has been addressed. And then north of Men's Shed, the Trust considers the 3 lots shown as residential precinct, Greytown to the north and Men's Shed would be better zoned as town centre zone within the historic heritage precinct. And, you know, in conclusion, what we seek to do is to underline and foster the identity and the economy and the community pride that are deeply tied to the heritage character of this small town. People come here expressly for that. And it would be a real shame to fall prey to some of the stumbling blocks of ribbon or strip development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. I have a question before I hand across to the panel. What about page 2, your presentation, under like support for the submission of Greytown Country Village? Just, is there an error in that last 2 lines? Therefore, the officer recommends the submission. What?
I think it's a typo, and I don't know where it comes from, and that's why I sought and why I veered off this and sought some clarification.
So to answer your question, on paragraph 129 of the section 42A report, it actually states in relation to Greytown Village Kevin's submission on this. Therefore, I recommend that the submission be rejected.
Yes, one of that should say, therefore, the officer recommends that recommends the rejection
of the submission. Yeah. And I did say that orally when I came here. I had spotted that myself.
Okay. Panel, any further questions? Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, a couple. No, thank you, Peter. Look, I tend to agree with you on the ribbon development idea. I'm just really interested. I want to test you on the little tease you out a little bit on the West Street thing. Yeah. My recollection, and tell me if I'm wrong, but in terms of West Street, it's mainly residential houses, and I'm thinking about the commercial things that are there: supermarket, car park with a supermarket car park and a supermarket, fire station, and the only other one I think is the entrance to the hubs. Yes. I think they're the only 3 non-residential entrances on West Street. Would that be right?
I think that's right.
So I'm really interested in what you mean by developing.
So as I understand it, 3 of the properties there are held in ownership currently by people who would have ambitions to see the West Street development. So some of the residential properties are already kind of lined up for that possibility. And so the coherence of that would have to work around. And actually, if you look at the housing stock, and this is difficult territory to step into, but some of that housing stock is less cared for than it might be. And one wonders whether the owners, in fact, because a lot of them are rental in that strip, are also predicating some of their future on the possibility that this is a redevelopment area. It's not all of them at all, but certainly some of them.
And the other part you talk about is residential growth to the west. You're aware of the spatial plan that has the residential growth going to the east
as well? Yes, yes.
And not to the west, literally, absolutely not to the west. The only growth area in Greytown and the spatial plan is down McMaster's across to Papua Road.
So what's the plan then that goes west to Mole Street? And the road goes to the point of
So if you go in through, I can't remember what's
Farley Street.
the entranceway opposite the car park. You've got that.
Yes, Farley.
There.
Go down Farley Street.
Yeah, Farley. Yeah, Farley Street.
Yeah.
I'm not sure because the section behind that where it goes to, it literally stops at the hedge. Behind there is category 2 or 1 land. That's the land that the Farleys have been trying to get rezoned numerous times, and it's very unlikely that it'll be done because of its significantly high category value of land.
In which case the trust misunderstands them. Yeah.
So you might want to go back to them because that's why if you have a look at the spatial plan, it's all east. Yeah.
And
Hang on, we've got a planner behind us.
Sorry, just so when Farley Ave ends, that orchard is residential and has been prior.
Yes.
It's got the structure plan for it.
Yes,
I think it was initially just zone residential. And then later on, we actually did a plan change to incorporate a structure plan.
Isn't that the bit that comes down like that on the map? You know, there's
can we
that,
bring that up on the screen?
yeah, there's that block that's
Yeah.
the Farleys have been trying to have rezoned.
Farley Ave.
Maybe another one.
Is it the next street over?
It's just wait and see.
And bring up a map on, not plugged in. Yeah.
And so, well,
And then I'll share my screen.
Both should show.
Bring it up bigger, so.
Yeah, so I think we're all talking about
Yep.
this land. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so probably zoom in.
Which land, sorry?
Yeah, no, you're good. Perfect. So all of that is apple orchard, that's your understanding. Do you know whether the Cook family still owns it?
I do.
Yeah. So they certainly indicated during the structure plan process that they were going to maintain that orchard for as long as.
The block I'm talking about is that next one down, isn't it? Come down to that.
Yeah.
That's is that the land that's?
No.
Which is the,
Rural. So I don't think anything this way has got that future urban zone.
yeah, nothing that way. All the future urban zone is down the bottom.
To just go back to the Molewood Orchard there, and
Yeah.
is that now out of frame as residential development?
Well, so it's residential, but obviously we can't go and enforce people to subdivide.
but it's residential for the life of the plan.
Yeah.
So 10 to 20 years.
Yes.
And so
So there is an element of development to the west.
it's an enablement of residential development to the west.
But if you look down the bottom of the silver, that's all the.
That's where
That's where the spatial plan's got the.
Yeah.
urban
all
development around there. Yeah.
But even so, the argument still stands that you're directing people north if you do strip development, rather than to a hub.
Yeah, I think that's McMaster's down. Always going right down the
All
bottom.
right, and McMaster's at the top end.
So the town centre zone, you were talking about sort of squaring up along the West Street there. That's
Yeah.
those half dozen properties or whatever.
And it's that whole thing of developing something that's all within footfall, and that hangs off the character of the small town as it stands, rather than becoming an elongated strip.
Don't want that. Sorry, well, and you talked about Stellarville Park and 1 Main Street, that's green space areas. Did you work in concert with the community board to put in a submission on that? I know you put in a submission on a lot of the green space, a big submission that you scrolled through. Did you work with community board or because I don't think council put in any submission on that rezoning either. I don't think. Sure they didn't.
We should have.
And you know the rugby ground lease has been signed for 99 years.
Any further questions down this end?
No, I had one, but Alison's asked it, but.
Am I right? Any? Roland?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you have any speaking notes there, which if you were just reading from your statement?
No, he's got enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gave you my notes. I do have another set of notes,
Let's mark it up.
which was just my intellectual challenge. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Peter. I think actually for a lot, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay. Can I have a quick break? Or-
Yep.
Yeah.
He's online now.
Yeah, Kello. Okay, welcome, Mr. Kello. Can you hear us, Dan?
I can.
Good. We can see you and hear you. We can see you and hear you. Mr. Kello, we're running slightly ahead of time for you, but we're going to hear you ahead of the afternoon tea break, and then we'll hear from Mr. McDonnell, Alan Blythe, and Sammy Wilkie on behalf of the Wallaces, and that should take us to probably 3:45 anyway, so timing's good. Okay, we're in your hands, Mr. Kello. Do you want to take us through your submission?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll start with the submission. Rezoning, of course, is the focus of today. The submission did cover, make a whole lot of comments on rules and objectives, but here today just to talk about the rezoning request by the owners of 18 Mole Street and number 92 Karatawhiti Street. So these sites are both zoned rural. They are both used for residential purposes. No primary production occurs on either site. They are 0.64 of a hectare, that's 18 Mole Street, 0.8 of a hectare, that's number 92. Both sites in part adjoin sites that are already zoned general recreation, general residentially zoned. When the owners asked me to consider whether there was any merit in requesting that these sites be rezoned, of course, the first thing I did was look at the surrounding area, check whether the sites are connected to other residential zones, residential sites. And the answer to that is obviously yes. There's a general residential block running along Mole Street. Sorry, yep, Mole Street. And then there are 6 sites along Karatawhiti Street from 90 through to, I think it's about 100. There's 5 of them. They are zoned rural, but they're clearly residential in use and in scale. So the request to zone residential, I thought, did have some merit given the surrounding actual land use. I couldn't identify any particular hazard issues that would prevent residential development. There are no Section 6 matters that would, in my mind, preclude preclude residential development being suitable for these sites. Both sites, there is the LUC, Land Use Classification Class 1. That's of relevance while they're zoned general rural. If they became residential, then the relevance of that classification would fall away. In terms of the district plan or the proposed district plan, there is objective 01, which is about the rural zone, which states the rural zone is used primarily for primary production, activities that support primary production, and other activities that have a functional need or operational need to be located within the general rural zone. Now, the current use of these sites is not primary production. It won't be primary production, and they're not of a scale that supports primary production. And I should add, neither are the sites along Kuratawhiti Street to the west and to the immediate east. So in my view, the existing zoning doesn't fit general rural. Hence why I thought there was some merit in requesting that the site be rezoned. I'm now going to move on to my comments that are made in evidence, unless there's some immediate questions that people have.
We might just see if there are some questions on the rezoning of those two properties. Hello?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, if I just talk briefly to the evidence.
Yes.
Sorry, apologies, I didn't hear the officers this morning, so I'm not sure if they've mentioned anything that's of relevance to these two sites in particular.
They haven't, Mr. Kello, and that's their 42A report is the dominant one at the stage, and that's primarily because the summary statement was focused on any expert evidence received between the 42A being released and the summary statement being produced. So, long story short, there's been no further comment on the submission. It's your pages 18 and 19 and 20 of the 42A that's relevant.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that. So in terms of the section 42, it was raised that allowing these sites to be rezoned to rural would create a disjointed urban boundary, because number 90 would remain zoned rural. And that's correct. That would be an anomaly on a planning map. I think that would be most relevant to a planner rather than the functioning of the district plan or the impact of, or any other impact. It's a housekeeping matter that a planner wouldn't like, but I don't think it has any actual impact on the implementation and effectiveness of the district plan. The 42 also mentions Wellington Water do not support the rezoning. I'm not up to date with perhaps the most current Wellington Water infrastructure limitations. I am working in other regions or other districts around Wellington where there are infrastructure capacity constraints. Where there's a constraint, I don't think it means a council can't rezone land for a purpose which may require or would require or result in additional demand on infrastructure. The infrastructure will catch up, hopefully, to the district plan zoning. It would be a very, very clunky approach to only ever rezone when all the infrastructure was in place. There are rules in the district plan that would, if these sites were rezoned, and if they were to seek consent for a subdivision, the subdivision wouldn't be a controlled activity unless there was sufficient infrastructure. And if that's not in place, the subdivision could be declined. Equally, building consent could be not granted if the suitable infrastructure wasn't either proposed or in place for any additional dwellings on the site. So I recognise infrastructure and capacity constraints are a real issue, but I don't think it prevents sites being rezoned, which in the future would generate additional demand on the infrastructure.
Yes, in other words, Mr. Kello, you're saying that the three services in this location wouldn't be a fatal impediment to rezoning. that the matters could be dealt with through the subdivision consent process, and if there wasn't suitable capacity or infrastructure in place, the subdivision could be declined.
Yeah,
if there
that's
was,
exactly.
it could be approved. It was.
Yeah, correct. And those issues are being worked through increasingly. Yeah, like I said, across councils in the Wellington area.
What about if there is no need for subdivision? So if these two sites were zoned, and I acknowledge that the larger sites, and there was just a land use proposed, such as dwellings without creation, would you maintain the same answer in terms of the ability of the council to effectively provide 3 water services?
Yeah, if a second dwelling was built on either site, and the case was that a resource consent wasn't required, a building consent certainly would be required, and that process would ensure that the building is connected to suitable infrastructure, whether that was on-site rainwater connection or public water supply, or on-site waste disposal to septic tank, or on-site stormwater discharge. The building consent simply wouldn't be granted unless the 3 water infrastructure was in place or could be in place at the time of the building.
Do you have a particular provision or set of provisions from the Building Act that you would reference in respect to that comment?
No, that's not quite my area of expertise. I could get that, and I can assure you I've been working in an area where exactly that has occurred. It's the consent process, the resource consent process. No resource consent was required, but the Building Act required someone to provide I won't get into the detail, but the building consent process absolutely allows the council to say no to that additional dwelling.
If you could provide that down the line to the hearings administrator, that would be appreciated.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry,
interrupted your flow there.
It's okay. The Section 42 also raised policy GRUZP3, stating it would be contrary to that policy. Policy states the character of the rural zone is to be maintained by retaining a clear delineation and contrast between the rural areas and urban areas. I don't think this proposal would mean there is not a clear delineation. It would slightly expand the urban area, but I don't think it would be inconsistent or contrary to that policy. The area is connected to other residentially zoned sites, so I disagree with the Section 42 report in paragraph 96. I think we should distinguish between what we see on district plan maps and what we see in reality out physically. If you're driving east to west, particularly along Kurutawhiri Road, I think the impression anyone would have is it's an urban area until you are well west of number 92, until you're beyond, I think it's number 102. There's another 5 sites west of number 92 that are slightly large for a typical residential site, and that they're around 2,000 square metres, but they have large single dwellings on them, which in my view, they absolutely appear residential, and the delineation or the urban-rural boundary starts to the west of those sites, certainly not to the west of number 92. In terms of 18 Mole Street, but that would form the urban-rural boundary, and there's no particular characteristics that make that an inappropriate rural-urban boundary in my mind. In my evidence, I wasn't sure of the point being made in paragraph 97 of the Section 42. So It was to do with the reverse sensitivity in relation to 90 Kuratawhiti Street. Now, again, that site is small. It is zoned rural, but it's used for residential purposes. If number 92 was rezoned and was used for residential purposes or more intensive residential purposes than it is currently, there wouldn't be reverse sensitivity issues. Inherently, residential activity next door to residential activity is not a reverse sensitivity matter. So they're my points. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Double check again with the panel. Yes. Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I just want to talk to you about number 90 a bit more and the effect on those property owners should the panel grant your request. Was any correspondence entered into with the owners of section 90?
No, there wasn't. No, I was just engaged by the owners of number 18 and 92.
Okay, so the same question for the next 5 properties up Kuratawhiti Street, of course. From a planning perspective, do you think that creates a bit of a almost like a fait accompli on a property owner who may not want their property rezoned from rural to urban?
In terms of, I mean, clearly this request is just to do with 18 and 92. As an aside, as the planner, I'm curious why the council didn't rezone numbers 96 and the 5 sites along there to the west. And I say that because in the future, those owners of those sites, they may get caught by rules that apply to them because they are zoned rural. They may be doing a small extension to their dwelling and it could well be too close to a side yard. So they'll need a resource consent, which probably entirely unnecessary in terms of the effect of the proposal, given that they are residentially used sites. But that's beside the point. So I think my earlier point that residential use of 92 would not generate effects on the owners of either 90 or 96 that are incompatible with those uses because they're used for residential purposes and not for primary production.
What's the size of 92?
92.8 of a hectare.
And so if you went to if you went to urban, how many sections could you put in there?
I haven't done a calculation, sorry, of potential yield. I can come back to you, otherwise I'll just be giving you the best guess at the moment.
Best guess is fine, because I'm just trying to, you said that any use of that section would have no effect on 90, but if you ended up with, just give it a quick check to see how many sections might fit in there.
Yeah, I should be careful. I mean, when I say no effect, I say not an incompatible effect. There's residential activity next door to residential activity is clearly what happens all through urban areas. There would be in a change, that the front set part of number 92 is pasture, is a paddock, and if there were several dwellings across that site, then the residential activity occurring next door to 90 and 96 would be noticeable, but it's not incompatible.
I think you sort of sort of hinted on the point I'm trying to make when you said that living next door to other dwellings in an urban area is compatible, but potentially the people that bought section 90 bought it because it's not urban and it's rural, and then you're changing the reasons why they potentially bought the property and the reasons why the owners of 92 bought the property in the beginning. So there would be an effect on the owners of section 90 with how many potential sites?
For an 8,000 square metre site, assuming you'd need land taken up as road, you'd probably have 10 to 13 possible lots.
So 10 to 13 possible lots on section 92 would have a huge effect on the owners of section 90, wouldn't it? And 96. For all of them around there.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it would change the entire nature of potentially why people bought where they bought.
Yeah, so 90 has 2 residential sites along its eastern boundary. And yes, it would change the outlook to the northwest from number 90 if there were several dwellings across there. Again, it doesn't mean it's incompatible. It's a change to the amenity they might value. But that's, development does that, and number 92, they could have accessory buildings on that front paddock, but I'm getting into hypotheticals. So, yes, I agree that there would be a change in the amenity around those properties. What I'm saying is I don't think it's incompatible.
The thing that strikes me is that there's been no discussion with those neighbours on this submission, which logically you'd think you would want to gain their support for such a proposal.
Yeah, I don't know the neighbourhood history. I was engaged by two landowners, so.
That's fine. Ask and answer. Hello. I've got a couple of questions. Just to whoever's driving the machine there, we put the language classification on here, please. Are you seeing the shared screen, Mr. Keller?
Yeah. Yes.
Just bringing up the HPL land use classification.
So it's not very, it's all that area. So if I turn it off, turn it on.
Again?
Yes, it's that whole area. That's why the development has gone to the east, not to the west.
Yeah.
So you've got orchards that are currently zoned urban, and then you've got all this Old Street, up the Reedy Street, that's very highly productive land up there.
Yeah. So that's LUC 1.
There'll be 2 probably. I would imagine most of it.
Both properties on Old Street. This is the reason it's balloon. AUC 1.
The operative plan maps.
I'm not sure if we've got any 1 around there. We've certainly got mainly 2. Could be.
My understanding they were LUC 2.
Yeah, I thought it was mainly 2.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a question to Mr. Gorman. Sorry.
Or I've got maps that can break it down.
Yeah, the operative does.
This is public maps, not the.
Thank you. Do you have an understanding of whether Mr. Can I have an understanding of whether those 5 properties on Mole Street that are zoned residential have a land use classification over them?
I thought the whole area was LUC 2.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Okay. What's your understanding of the zoning and the operative district plan for the five properties that are currently
They're rural.
in the operative district plan?
Yes.
What's your, do you have any understanding as to why they've been identified as residential in the proposed plan, notified version?
Sorry, have I got that wrong? So the on screen now, the 5 properties along Mole Street is zoned residential.
Yes, and
is they own the ODP?
The residential and the ODP also.
Yes.
Thank you. Final question from me, Mr. Coe, and I think it's probably I know the answer, but in the 42A report, Gorman has raised the possibility of alternative at paragraph 98. Did you notice that?
Sorry, I'll just try to grab it. I've got multiple screens working here.
Do you have that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just getting there now, looking for paragraph
Page
98.
20.
Page 20.
Yeah, got it now. Yeah.
Do you have any comment on the utility of that alternate relief, both in terms of A, scope, and B, merits?
In terms of scope, in terms of the submission,
It's in, isn't it? Fairly in, is it?
yeah, I mean, clearly you can request.
Yep.
So it's within scope.
Guess what I'm asking is, if the panel were not of a mind to rezone the land as requested by the primary submission, general rural to residential, what extent would a future urban zone of those two properties go some way to meeting the aspirations of the submitter? And to what extent could you support that from a planning perspective?
Yeah, future urban zones are certainly, a frequently used planning tool. Typically used to prevent activities establishing on that land that would prevent the future use that's been signalled through the future urban zone. In this case, I can't think of, the likelihood of the land being used for a purpose that would make it unsuitable for residential development in the future is very low. And if that's often the main driver for using future urban zone, future urban zoning. So,
I mean, at 1.5 hectares total, it's not a large area for a future urban zone, is it?
no, it's not. And yeah, it's not large. And the likelihood of it being used for a purpose that would frustrate a future urban zoning is fairly unlikely. So I'm not sure if it's a useful tool.
Yes.
In saying that, is certainly a signal to the owners that, and planning is a long-term process, that in the future it would be maybe the next cab off the rank for rezoning. But
yes, would an FUZ zoning have any unintended consequences, and when compared to the current notified zoning of rural?
I would have to go back through the rules, and that can take a while. So I don't have an immediate answer to that. Sorry.
Okay. Well, if I was to tell you, and have you be corrected by any of the officers, the future urban zone largely defaults to rural zone type provisions as a holding pattern, would that assist in your answer?
Yeah, it would. I think there would be very limited value of the future urban zone. Defaulting back to rural, well, we're back in the position that the owners are trying to move ahead from. So no, there wouldn't be a great deal of support for that approach.
Right.
I mean, this partly stemmed from the non-complying, largely stemmed from the non-complying activity status that was opposed to all subdivision in the general rural zone when it was below a threshold, irrespective of the seemingly of the likelihood of the site ever being used for rural purposes. And it was a very high bar to get over for what, from my perspective, an unnecessarily high bar for sites like this, which were anomalies, I think, in the rural zone. So it was partly the genesis of this submission. But circle back, no, the future urban zone wouldn't achieve, what the submission is trying to achieve.
Thank you for that answer. That concludes the questions that the panel have. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, we will take a short 5 to 10 minute adjournment for a comfort stop, and welcome to bring back a tea or coffee. Yes, we'll move on with your client, Nathan. Parents adjourned.
Thank you.
Send me the